Hello, I'm back. This is Allie from OK to Be Fat, and I am back on my evangelical. I have my post-its. I'm back on my evangelical series. Let's talk about evangelicals. Hi, secular people. How are you? I don't expect to get like evangelical viewers. Although, if I do, like, let's chat. I don't know. Probably let's not. Um, I don't want to, like, do a deep dive into your jargon again, but I can if you want to go there. So, um, all right. So today, I want to talk about something that I call apologizing to Jesus, or how does forgiveness work, right? Okay, so how does forgiveness work? How should forgiveness work in like a personal context, but also in a context of like theology and religion? So basically, in an ideal world, you do something, right? You do a thing. I don't know why I picked up the pen. You do something, and then you realize that it was wrong. Maybe you knew it was wrong to start with, but at some point you come into a realization that you've hurt someone and that you need to apologize or make amends. Like you want, maybe to like maybe you feel bad, you want the person to forgive you. So what does that look like? Okay, so this is a big topic right now too, just to situate this moment in time. Louis C.K. has just come back into trying to go into comedy, so there's a lot of talk about redemption and forgiveness going on Twitter right now. So I already had written down, like, let's talk about forgiveness. So let's talk about it. The way that it should work, you wrong someone, and then you want them to forgive you. How do you get them to forgive you? Well, you can't make them, for one thing. Like, forgiveness is something that someone decides to do. Um, you know, and I don't really agree with the people who are like, oh, you have to forgive, or you're holding on to it forever. I don't agree with that, and you'll see why in a minute, because of the way that I came up in the church. But, like, in order for someone to feel like you really are sorry, right, you have to seem like you're sorry. Like, you have to, you want to do what we call, like, in the church, or in other places we call amends. You want to make amends, right? That looks different in different situations, but you do a thing, you make amends, you try not to do it again, and then, maybe the person will forgive you. That's not how it works in the evangelical church. And especially it's not how it works for men. Like, let's be honest. Because people, like, are constantly saying, how is it that evangelicals, these people who consider themselves to be super religious, how can they support Donald Trump? Because he has done all these things that they would think are like sinful. And it's because of the way that they like view redemption, and is part of it. So there's a big narrative towards redemption stories. Like, evangelicals love a good redemption story. And the worse you were, right, the better the redemption. So frequently we would have these like assemblies in youth group. We would go to, youth camp conferences. When I was in an evangelical school, we had them at the weekly chapel that we had. And they would bring in people, and people who would tell these like really like pretty wild stories about things that they had been through, hardships, and a lot of it was stuff like they had used drugs, or they had had sex, or things that evangelicals like don't want their kids to do, like like, oh, maybe they thought they were gay, or there's like a there's a range. But you know, and the more these stories like serve this sort of like titillating function of you know, telling like because they don't just say I used to take drugs. They want to go through every like every detail of like of the degradation. Like that's the thing that like they want all the details on, like, and you just get detail after detail after detail. You know, I remember pretty like pretty bad stories, like, and things that I thought were like pretty horrendous when I was a kid. Things that would give me nightmares. You know, some of these things were in like sermons and were clearly made up. Um, like the I'll never forget this. Like the woman who was decapitated by a log from a logging truck, which like where we lived there were a lot of logging trucks. They did a lot of logging there, so I had like a lot of intense fear about like my parents driving behind a logging truck after that for a long time. And so he tells this like really gruesome story and like really describes how like bloody and visceral the whole thing was. And then the end of it is like, but she had a Bible where she said she had written in it that she had been saved, so it's fine. Okay, I don't think so. Like, I mean, this person's still dead. This person didn't exist. Let's be clear. But like, you know, I'm a kid, they're an adult, and I'm thinking, but she's still dead though, right? Like, probably she would rather be saved and alive. But that's the way these stories work. That's the way the whole sort of structure of these stories and the redemption stories are just the same. Just like I did all these things and it was grimy and I was bad and listen to all the bad things that I did. Ooh, isn't it kind of sexy? And ooh, so bad. And then, you know, they sort of like, I would say like 2/3 of it, 3/4 of it will be just like telling the kinds of stories that you tell where you're like, I was so drunk and then this thing happened, or I was so whatever and then this thing happened. And you know, and then at the end it's like, but then I found Jesus, so now I'm not that person anymore. And so it's fine, right? Like, I mean, let's be clear. I think most of the things that evangelicals think are sins are not. I don't believe in sin. I don't really think that's a thing. You should try to not hurt people, but you know, drugs are your business. But you know, the things that would be like what's the word? Like they would disqualify you. They'd be disqualifying, right? Like you would be fellowshipped out of a church for, you know, just having premarital sex and being like, woo, I don't care. Or like, you know, doing a bunch of drugs or like whatever it is that they think's the worst thing. You know, listening to secular music. But like you can do all those things and you can be really bad, but it just makes your redemption story better. It just gives more glory to God that you were so bad and now God has made you so good, right? And so it doesn't matter to evangelicals that Donald Trump did any of these things. Like none of these things are going to matter because they either like don't care, and like I cannot express to you how much they don't care. Like they're very instrumental in like what they think about power. You know, if this person can give them power, they will absolutely go with that. It does not matter. You know, it's a very like authoritarian religion and they worship power. They don't worship Jesus. They worship power. But you know, if you think about it that way, you'll never be like confused, right? And so they're basically like fascists just waiting to get into power. And like, and I think that So that's kind of the thing with the redemption stuff that I wanted to talk about, where it's just like there's Donald Trump is a redemption waiting to happen, right? Or he's already happened because he's joined up with them, and so therefore he's redeemed. It doesn't take much to become redeemed as an evangelical. You just have to say the right words, like they're magical words. And if you say the words, then everything that you did does not matter, right? Like you could set a baby on fire, and as long as you say the words to Jesus, insofar as evangelicals are concerned, you are fine and you will go right to heaven. And someone who is a good person, who helps people, who like devotes their life to feeding hungry children, if they didn't say the magic words, they will go to hell. And those are the rules. And it's you can see pretty quickly where that like causes some ethical problems, and it does. It causes a lot of ethical problems. So in coming back to forgiveness, so that's redemption. So let's talk about forgiveness. The way that evangelicals kind of deal with forgiveness is that they give whatever they've done to Jesus, right? So they ask for Jesus's forgiveness, and then Jesus forgets. Like, so that's what they say. So like when Jesus forgives you for something, God forgets about it. It's like it never happened, right? So that's not great sometimes, because I mean, I guess I can see where you wouldn't want to be racked with guilt for every little, I mean, because God, there's so many rules. Like, you wouldn't want to be racked with guilt over like everything that you've like ever done to contravene an evangelical rule, because there's like a bajillion of them. But the problem is that people extend this into their interpersonal relationships. For example, my family members, when I would say like, you did that thing and it really hurt me, or I wish you wouldn't be mean to me, like I wish you wouldn't insult me in front of people. But like my father's response to that is like, I gave that to Jesus, so why are you still mad? Like, that's the response. I gave it to Jesus. I've been forgiven. My sins have been washed away. So it doesn't exist. It didn't happen. It's a real gaslighty religion, And like, you can say, I mean, you can say that, but it doesn't mean anything to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, so you told Jesus you were sorry, but you never told me you were sorry, right? And like, I'm the one, like, you didn't insult Jesus in front of his friends. Like, that was me. You didn't put your hands on Jesus. You did that to me. But it doesn't matter, right? It's just like, well, I don't know why you can't get, like, why can't you be more Christ-like, right? And so the thing is you do something, you apologize to Jesus for it, you make no amends, and then you just do it again. That's what they do. That's my experience with evangelicals, is they do something, very hurtful, and then they go, well, I guess I'm sorry to Jesus. Or like, just like, yeah, I did that. And then like, I gave it to Jesus. And like, who knows if they did or not, it doesn't even matter. And so then it's supposed to be like it didn't happen. And it's just a raft of fucked up. Like, it just perpetuates these like cycles of like abusive behavior. If someone abuses you in the evangelical church and you make any kind of noise about it, if you are like, I want some kind of resolution to this, I want an apology, I want the person not to do it again, then like by saying like I'm not okay with this, like you are the problem. So yeah, like that's what I get really tight when people are like, well, you have to forgive, because it really reminds me of people, you know, kind of jumping up and down on me when I was a teenager, being like, well, you have to forgive your father. Well, you have to forgive your Sunday school teacher. Well, you have to forgive your sister. But they haven't done anything to show that they're even sorry. You know, they haven't even said they're sorry. They don't seem sorry. And then they just did it again. So why not just do whatever you want? Right? And they do. And so, yeah, evangelicals, forgiveness. Just tell Jesus you're sorry. So, I don't have anything else to say about that. And this is long enough. So, that's forgiveness. That's redemption. If you have any questions. Ooh, just had a little hiccup. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment. I am happy to answer questions about evangelicals for secular people. And I'm happy to look up Bible verses to dunk on evangelicals. If they start stuff. But I'll probably just delete it. But anyway, so that's that. And I'll be back next time. Bye.